The dinner plate shattered against the wall, missing Eleanor's head by mere inches. She stood perfectly still, her hands folded at her waist, her eyes fixed on the floor. Years of practice had taught her not to flinch. "You clumsy fool!" Lady Thornwood's voice rang through the dining room. "That was my grandmother's china. Do you know what that set is worth?" Eleanor did know. She had polished each piece countless times since coming to Thornwood Manor at age 12. That was 15 years ago. The china was worth more than Eleanor would earn in 10 years of service. Everything in this house was worth more than her. "Forgive me, my lady." The words came out soft and steady. Eleanor had learned long ago that showing fear only made things worse. Lady Thornwood rose from her seat. Her silk gown rustled as she crossed the room. Eleanor could see the hem of that gown now, dark blue with silver embroidery. It cost more than Eleanor's entire wardrobe, more than her mother's wardrobe before her, more than her grandmother's before that. 3 generations of Hartley women had served the Thornwood family. Eleanor's grandmother had been the housekeeper. Her mother had been Lady Thornwood's personal maid. Now Eleanor held the same position. It was supposed to be an honor, a family tradition, a sign of the Thornwood family's loyalty to faithful servants. Eleanor had never felt honored. She felt trapped. "You will clean this up immediately," Lady Thornwood said, "and the cost will come from your wages." "Yes, my lady." Eleanor knelt to gather the broken pieces. Her fingers moved carefully over the sharp edges. One wrong move, and she would bleed. She had bled many times before. Small cuts that stained her apron, burns from candle wax, bruises from carrying heavy trunks up narrow stairs. Lady Thornwood's daughter, Miss Catherine, laughed from her seat at the table. "Honestly, Mama, I don't know why you keep her. She's so plain and awkward. Surely we could find a better maid." "The Hartleys have always served us," Lady Thornwood said. "It is tradition, though I must say, Eleanor is quite the disappointment compared to her mother. Her mother had grace and beauty. Eleanor is neither." The words struck deeper than any thrown plate could. Eleanor had heard similar things her entire life. Too tall, too thin, hair too dark and straight, eyes too large for her narrow face, hands too rough from work, no curves to speak of, plain as porridge, someone had once said. The phrase had stuck. She gathered the last of the broken china and stood. "Will that be all, my lady?" "No, Lord Ashworth arrives tomorrow. You will prepare the East Wing guest rooms. Everything must be perfect. His late wife was my dear friend, and I will not have him disappointed." Eleanor's heart sank. The East Wing had been closed for months. It would take all night to make those rooms ready. She had not slept more than 4 hours in the past week. Lady Thornwood was entertaining constantly this season. There were always guests, always demands, always more work than could possibly be done. "Yes, my lady."
"And Eleanor? Do try to stay out of sight while Lord Ashworth is here. Your appearance is rather distressing. I should hate for him to think we employ unsuitable staff."
"Yes, my lady." Eleanor left the dining room with the broken china carefully wrapped in her apron. Her throat felt tight. Her eyes burned. But she did not cry. Crying was for the weak. Crying changed nothing. She had learned that lesson young. The kitchen was warm and busy. Cook was preparing tomorrow's menu. 2 scullery maids were washing pots. The footman was polishing silver. They all glanced at Eleanor as she entered. They all looked away quickly. No one wanted to be seen sympathizing with her. Lady Thornwood punished sympathy. Eleanor disposed of the broken china and went to gather cleaning supplies. The East Wing waited. 6 bedrooms, 2 sitting rooms, a private library, all needing to be aired and dusted and polished until they shone. She climbed the servants' stairs with her arms full of linens and brushes. Her back ached, her feet hurt, but she had learned to work through pain. There was always more work. There would always be more work. The east wing was cold and dark. Eleanor lit the lamps one by one. Dust covered everything. She started with the main bedroom. This would be Lord Ashworth's room. She had never met the man, but she knew his reputation. Wealthy beyond measure. A duke's son. Widowed 5 years ago. Never remarried. Society whispered that he was still mourning his wife. Eleanor wondered what it would be like to be mourned. To be so loved that someone could not move on, even after 5 years. She had never been loved like that. Her mother had loved her, yes, but in a tired, worn way, a duty more than a joy. Her father had died when she was a baby. She had no siblings, no friends among the other servants. She was alone. She scrubbed the floor until her knuckles bled. She washed the windows until they gleamed. She beat the dust from the curtains until her arms trembled. The night wore on. The house grew silent. Still she worked. Dawn was breaking when she finished. The rooms looked beautiful. Fresh linens on the beds. Flowers in the vases. Books arranged neatly on the shelves. Fire laid in the hearth, ready to be lit. Everything perfect. Eleanor returned to her own tiny room in the servants' quarters. She had 1 hour before she must wake Lady Thornwood, 1 hour to wash and change her clothes, 1 hour to pretend she was not exhausted beyond words. She looked at herself in the small mirror above her wash basin, plain face, dark circles under her eyes, lips pressed thin with fatigue. No wonder they found her distressing to look at. She was not pretty. She had never been pretty. But she was strong. That was something. She had survived this long. She would survive longer. She just wished surviving did not hurt quite so much. Lord Ashworth's carriage arrived exactly at noon. Eleanor watched from an upper window as he stepped down. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair touched with grey at the temples. He moved with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. A man who had never scrubbed floors until his hands bled. Eleanor turned away. She had work to do. The lunch service would begin soon. Lady Thornwood expected perfection. Eleanor had learned to deliver nothing less. She spent the afternoon in the shadows, appearing when needed, vanishing when not. It was a skill she had perfected over the years. How to be present without being noticed. How to serve without being seen. Lord Ashworth barely glanced at her when she poured his tea. His eyes were a startling grey, cold, distant. The eyes of a man who saw servants as furniture, useful but uninteresting. Eleanor was used to such looks. She had been looked through her entire life. That evening, Lady Thornwood hosted a dinner. 12 guests. 6 courses. Eleanor and the other servants moved through the room like ghosts. Silent, efficient, invisible. Until Eleanor tripped. It was a simple mistake. Her foot caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled forward. The wine bottle in her hand tilted. Red wine splashed across the white tablecloth. Drops landed on Miss Catherine's gown. The room went silent. Eleanor's heart stopped. She set the bottle down with shaking hands. "Forgive me. I am so sorry. Please forgive me." Miss Catherine shrieked. "My gown! This gown cost £50. You stupid, clumsy creature." Lady Thornwood rose from her seat. Her face was white with rage. "Get out. Get out of my sight this instant." Eleanor fled. She heard the laughter behind her. The cruel whispers. The sound of her own shame echoing in her ears. She ran to her room and locked the door. Then finally, she allowed herself to cry. She cried for her tired mother who had worked herself to death in this house. She cried for her grandmother who had done the same. She cried for herself and the life she had never chosen, but could not escape. 3 generations of service. 3 generations of invisible women. 3 generations of being less than, being nothing. Eleanor pressed her hands over her mouth to muffle the sounds of her weeping. Even in her own room, she was not allowed to take up space, not allowed to be heard, not allowed to matter. Tomorrow she would be punished. Wages deducted, extra work assigned, perhaps even dismissal. She had no savings, nowhere to go, no family to take her in. She was trapped. She had always been trapped. A soft knock came at her door. Eleanor froze. "Who is it?" "Mrs. Graham, dear." The housekeeper's voice was gentle. "May I come in?" Eleanor unlocked the door. Mrs. Graham entered and closed it behind her. She was an older woman with kind eyes, one of the few people in the house who had ever shown Eleanor any warmth. "I brought you some bread and cheese," Mrs. Graham said. "You missed supper." Eleanor had not realized she was hungry until she saw the food. She ate while Mrs. Graham sat on the edge of the narrow bed. "Lady Thornwood is very angry," Mrs. Graham said quietly. "She wants to dismiss you." Eleanor's hands stilled. "I see. But Lord Ashworth spoke on your behalf." Eleanor looked up in surprise. "What?" "He said accidents happen. He said it would be unjust to dismiss you for one mistake. He was quite firm about it." Mrs. Graham smiled. Lady Thornwood could not refuse him. "He is too important a guest." Eleanor did not know what to say. A lord had defended her. A man who had barely looked at her had spoken up to save her position. It made no sense. "Why would he do that?" she whispered. Mrs. Graham patted her hand. "Perhaps he has a kind heart. They do exist, you know, even among the nobility." Eleanor wanted to believe that, but kindness had been so rare in her life that she had almost forgotten what it felt like. She finished her bread and cheese. Mrs. Graham left with a final word of encouragement. Eleanor lay down on her bed, fully clothed. She was too tired to undress, too tired to think. But as she drifted towards sleep, she thought of Lord Ashworth's grey eyes, and she wondered if perhaps they were not quite as cold as she had first believed. The next morning brought rain. Eleanor woke early and dressed in her plainest gown. She braided her hair tightly and pinned it beneath her cap. She made herself as small and unnoticeable as possible. She went to Lady Thornwood's room to help her dress. The lady was still angry. She snapped orders and complained constantly, but she did not mention dismissal. Eleanor worked in silence and was grateful. After breakfast, Lady Thornwood took Miss Catherine to visit neighbours. The house became quiet. Eleanor was assigned to dust the library. It was a large room filled with books that no one read. She liked the library. It was peaceful. She was high on a ladder, dusting the top shelves when Lord Ashworth entered. She did not hear him at first. She was humming softly to herself, a habit from childhood. Her mother had always hummed while she worked. "You have a lovely voice." Eleanor nearly fell off the ladder. She grabbed the shelf to steady herself and looked down. Lord Ashworth stood below, looking up at her. He was not smiling, but his expression was not unkind. "Forgive me, my lord. I did not mean to disturb you." "You did not disturb me. I came for a book." He gestured to the shelves. "Please continue your work." Eleanor climbed down from the ladder. She stood to the side, hands folded, eyes lowered, the proper position for a servant in the presence of nobility. Lord Ashworth browsed the shelves. He pulled out a volume of poetry and flipped through it. Then he glanced at Eleanor. "Do you read?" The question surprised her. Servants were not usually asked about their personal habits. "Yes, my lord, when I have time. Which is not often, I imagine." "No, my lord." He returned the poetry book to the shelf and selected another. "What do you prefer? Poetry? Novel?" Eleanor hesitated. This conversation was strange. Lords did not chat with servants. Certainly not about books, but he seemed genuinely curious. "I like stories about faraway places," she said softly. "Places I will never see." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, perhaps. Travel is one of life's great pleasures. "I have been to many places, Italy, France, Greece, but I found that no matter where I went, I brought my sorrows with me." Eleanor looked up at him without thinking. His face was sad, the face of a man carrying a great weight. Before she could stop herself, she said, "Sometimes home is the hardest place to be." Their eyes met. For a moment, the distance between servant and lord disappeared. They were simply two people who understood loneliness. Then Lord Ashworth looked away. "Indeed, you are very perceptive." He tucked the book under his arm. "Good day." He left the library. Eleanor stood frozen by the ladder. Her heart was beating strangely fast. She touched her hand to her chest and felt the rapid rhythm. What had just happened? Why had he spoken to her like that? Why had she answered so honestly? She climbed back up the ladder, but her mind was not on her work. She kept thinking of his sad eyes, his quiet words, the way he had listened to her, as if her answer mattered. No one had ever made her feel as though her thoughts mattered before. Over the next week, strange things began to happen. Small things, easy to dismiss, but they added up. Lord Ashworth left books on the library table, books about Italy and Greece, books with beautiful illustrations of distant lands. Eleanor found them while cleaning. She knew they were meant for her. She read them late at night by candlelight. He began to appear in whatever room Eleanor was cleaning. He would ask her opinion on small matters, which chair looked most comfortable, whether the flowers in the vase were arranged well, how the morning light looked through the windows. At first Eleanor thought he was mocking her, but his questions were genuine. He listened to her answers. Sometimes he even smiled. Lady Thornwood noticed. She began to send Eleanor on errands that kept her away from the main house. Errands to the village, tasks in the laundry. Anything to keep Eleanor out of Lord Ashworth's sight. But Lord Ashworth seemed to notice her absence. He asked Mrs. Graham where Eleanor was. He looked disappointed when told she was occupied elsewhere. The servants began to whisper. Eleanor heard the rumors. Lord Ashworth was interested in her. Impossible. Surely, lords did not become interested in plain poor servants. It was unheard of. It would cause scandal. Eleanor tried to ignore the whispers. She tried to avoid Lord Ashworth, but the house was only so large. They kept encountering each other. One afternoon, Eleanor was in the garden cutting roses for the dinner table. The rain had stopped, and the sun was shining. She loved the garden. It was the only place she felt truly at peace. She heard footsteps on the gravel path. She turned and saw Lord Ashworth walking toward her. He was not dressed for riding or visiting. He wore a simple coat and carried no hat. He looked almost ordinary, almost like a regular man instead of a lord. "Good afternoon," he said. "Good afternoon, my lord," Eleanor curtsied, nearly dropping her basket of roses. "You look happy here," he observed. "I like the garden," Eleanor admitted. "It is quiet." "Yes, I find I enjoy quiet as well." He moved closer. "May I help you?" Eleanor blinked. "Help me, my lord." "With the roses. You are cutting them for the house." "Yes." "Yes. But my lord, it is not proper for you to. I think I can decide what is proper for me." His voice was gentle, but firm. He took the shears from her hands. Their fingers brushed. Eleanor felt a jolt like lightning. Lord Ashworth cut roses and handed them to Eleanor to place in the basket. They worked in silence for several minutes. It was comfortable, easy, as if they had done this 100 times before. "I must leave tomorrow," he said finally. Eleanor's hands stilled. She had not realized how much she had been enjoying his presence until faced with his departure. "I see. I have business in London that cannot wait. But I will return in 3 weeks." He looked at her directly. "I would like to see you again." Eleanor's breath caught. "My lord, I don't understand." "I think you do." He handed her another rose. "You are not what they say you are." "What do they say I am?" "Plain, simple, unremarkable." He smiled slightly. "They are blind. You are none of those things." Eleanor felt her face grow hot. She did not know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her this way. No one had ever looked at her the way he was looking at her now, as if she were precious, as if she mattered. "I must go," she whispered. "Lady Thornwood will be looking for me." She fled before he could respond. Her heart was pounding. Her thoughts were a jumbled mess. She rushed to the kitchen and thrust the roses at Cook. Then she ran to her room and locked the door. She sat on her bed and pressed her hands to her burning cheeks. This could not be happening. Lords did not notice servants. They certainly did not speak to them with such warmth, such kindness, unless he wanted something. Men of power always wanted something. Eleanor had heard the stories, servants taken advantage of, used and discarded, left with ruined reputations and nowhere to turn. Was that what Lord Ashworth wanted? Was his kindness simply a trap? Eleanor wanted to believe otherwise. She wanted to believe that his interest was genuine, that his compliments were sincere, but she had been hurt too many times to trust easily. She would have to be careful, very careful. Her heart was already dangerously close to feeling things it should not feel. Already dangerously close to hoping. And hope, Eleanor had learned, was the most dangerous thing of all. Lord Ashworth departed the next morning. Eleanor watched his carriage leave from the same upper window where she had first seen him arrive. She felt an ache in her chest that she could not name. Life returned to normal. Lady Thornwood's temper returned to its usual sharpness. Miss Catherine found new ways to be cruel. Eleanor worked from dawn to midnight with barely a rest. But something had changed. Eleanor found herself touching the books Lord Ashworth had left for her. She reread passages about Italian sunsets and Greek temples. She imagined what it would be like to see such places, to walk somewhere beautiful with someone who saw beauty in her. She imagined Lord Ashworth beside her, his grey eyes warm instead of cold, his hand reaching for hers. Then she would shake herself from such foolish thoughts. Dreams were for people who had the luxury of dreaming, not for servants, not for women like her. 3 weeks passed slowly. Eleanor counted the days without meaning to. She told herself it was silly. Lord Ashworth had probably forgotten her already. He had returned to his grand life in London. She was nothing to him. A momentary curiosity, nothing more. But on the 21st day, his carriage returned. Eleanor was polishing silver in the dining room when she heard the horses. Her heart leaped. She forced herself to keep working, to appear unaffected, to be the invisible servant she was supposed to be. Lord Ashworth was greeted warmly by Lady Thornwood. Eleanor could hear their voices in the entrance hall. Lord Ashworth asked about the household, about the weather, about trivial things. Then he asked, "And how is Miss Eleanor?" The dining room fell silent. The footman beside Eleanor gave her a startled look. Lady Thornwood's voice took on a sharp edge. "Miss Eleanor? You mean my lady's maid? She is well, I suppose." "Why do you ask?" "Simple courtesy," Lord Ashworth replied smoothly. "I happened to speak with her during my last visit. She seemed a dedicated servant. I wished to ensure she had not been punished for the wine incident." "Oh, no. She was not dismissed, though perhaps she should have been." "I am glad to hear it." Eleanor's hands trembled. She set down the silver spoon she was polishing before she could drop it. The footman leaned close and whispered, "He really did ask about you. My lord, what have you done to catch his attention?" "Nothing," Eleanor whispered back. "I have done nothing." But that was not quite true. She had been herself. For the first time in years, she had allowed someone to see the real Eleanor. The one who loved books and gardens and quiet moments. The one who had thoughts and feelings beyond simple obedience. Perhaps that had been enough. That evening, Lord Ashworth requested that Eleanor serve at dinner. Lady Thornwood could not refuse without being rude. So Eleanor found herself once again carrying dishes and pouring wine under Lord Ashworth's steady gaze. He did not speak to her directly. That would have been inappropriate. But his eyes followed her movements. When she filled his glass, he said quietly, "Thank you, Eleanor." Her name. He had used her name, not girl or you, or simply ignored her as most nobles did. Her actual name. Eleanor felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been frozen for so very long. After dinner, as Eleanor was clearing plates, Lady Thornwood called her over. "Eleanor, Lord Ashworth requires a fire lit in his study. See to it at once." "Yes, my lady." Eleanor gathered kindling and went to the study. It was a masculine room. Dark wood and leather chairs, shelves of serious books. It smelled of tobacco and old paper. She knelt by the hearth and began building the fire. She heard the door open and close behind her. She knew without looking that Lord Ashworth had entered. "Thank you for this," he said. "It is my duty, my lord." "Is it your duty to make me feel at peace for the first time in 5 years?" Eleanor's hands stilled. She slowly stood and turned to face him. He was standing close, closer than was proper, but not threatening. Never threatening. "My lord, I do not understand what you want from me," she said softly. "I want to know you," he replied. "I want to hear your thoughts. I want to see you smile. I want—" He stopped himself. "Forgive me. I am being too forward." "You are a lord," Eleanor said. "You can be as forward as you wish. I cannot refuse you." Pain flashed across his face. "Is that what you think? That I would use my position to force you?" "I do not know what to think." He stepped back, giving her space. "You are right to be cautious. I have not been clear about my intentions. Let me be clear now." He took a breath. "My wife died 5 years ago. I loved her deeply. When she passed, I thought I would never feel anything again. I went through life as if sleepwalking. Nothing touched me. Nothing moved me." Eleanor listened silently. Her heart was beating so hard, she thought he must be able to hear it. "Then I came to this house," Lord Ashworth continued, "and I saw a woman being treated with cruelty, a woman who endured it with grace and strength, a woman who hummed while she worked and read books about faraway places, a woman who understood loneliness." He looked directly into her eyes. "You woke me up, Eleanor. You made me feel again. I am nobody, Eleanor whispered. I am a servant, plain and poor. You are extraordinary, he interrupted, and I will not stand here and listen to you diminish yourself simply because others have been blind and cruel. Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. She had not cried in front of anyone since she was a child, but these tears were different. They were not tears of pain, but of something else, something that felt almost like joy. What do you want from me? She asked again. Everything, he said simply. But I will settle for friendship if that is all you can give. I will not push. I will not demand. I simply want the chance to know you, truly know you. Eleanor wiped her eyes. She knew this was impossible. A lord and a servant, society would never accept it. Lady Thornwood would dismiss her instantly if she knew. It was foolish to even consider it. But when was the last time anyone had wanted to know her? When was the last time anyone had seen her as more than a pair of hands to do work? I would like that, she heard herself say. I would like to be friends. Lord Ashworth smiled. It transformed his entire face, made him look younger, happier. Thank you, Eleanor. You have no idea what that means to me. He left the study before anyone could notice how long he had been alone with her. Eleanor finished lighting the fire with shaking hands. Then she sat back on her heels and stared into the flames. What had she just agreed to? What was she doing? She was taking a chance. For the first time in her life, she was choosing to hope. It terrified her, but it also made her feel more alive than she had felt in years. The following weeks were the happiest of Eleanor's life. Lord Ashworth extended his stay at Thornwood Manor. He claimed to be working on business matters, but Eleanor knew the truth. He was staying for her. They met in secret, not for anything improper, simply to talk, to be together. Lord Ashworth would arrange to be in the library at certain times, or walking in the garden, or riding near the village when Eleanor was sent on errands. They talked about everything. He told her about his travels, his childhood, his late wife, who had been kind and gentle and taken too soon by a sudden illness. He spoke of his grief and how it had nearly destroyed him. Eleanor told him about her mother and grandmother, about growing up in service, about the books she loved and the places she dreamed of seeing. She even told him about the cruelties she had endured, things she had never spoken of before. He listened to everything. He never interrupted or dismissed her feelings. He simply listened and understood. One afternoon, they met in the woods beyond the manor. It was risky. Anyone could have seen them. But Lord Ashworth had insisted, I want to walk with you somewhere no one is watching. He said, somewhere we can simply be ourselves. They walked along a narrow path beneath tall trees. Sunlight filtered through the leaves in golden patches. Birds sang overhead. It was beautiful. I have made a decision, Lord Ashworth said suddenly. Eleanor looked at him. What decision, my lord? Please, call me James, at least when we are alone. That would not be proper. I do not care about proper. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Eleanor, I have fallen in love with you. The world seemed to stop. Eleanor could not breathe, could not think, could only stare at him in shock. I know it is sudden, James continued. I know it is complicated, but I cannot pretend otherwise. Every moment with you is precious. Every conversation leaves me wanting more. You have brought light back into my life. You have given me a reason to feel again, to live again. This is impossible, Eleanor whispered. You are a lord. I am a servant. Society will never accept it. Then society can go to hell. Eleanor gasped at his language, but he looked utterly serious. I have lived according to society's rules my entire life, James said. I married the woman my family approved of. I attended the right events. I said the right things. And I was happy for a time. But when my wife died, those rules offered me no comfort. That life felt empty. He took Eleanor's hands in his. They were rough and work-worn, but he held them as if they were made of glass, as if they were precious. "You make me feel like myself again," he said softly. "Not Lord Ashworth, not a duke's son, just James. A man who wants to be happy, a man who wants to make you happy." "I do not know how to be happy," Eleanor admitted. "I have never been allowed to be happy." "Then let me teach you." He lifted one of her hands and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Let me show you what it feels like to be cherished, to be valued, to be loved exactly as you are." Eleanor felt tears spill down her cheeks. "This will not end well. Lady Thornwood will dismiss me. Your family will disown you. We will both be ruined." "Perhaps," James acknowledged, "or perhaps we will be free. Free to build a life together. Free to be happy, despite what anyone else thinks. You would give up everything for me. Everything I have means nothing without you." Eleanor had never believed in fairy tales. She had never believed that someone like her could have a happy ending. But standing there in the golden woods with James, looking at her as if she were the most important person in the world, she almost believed. "I am frightened," she whispered. "So am I," James admitted. "But I would rather be frightened with you than empty without you." Eleanor looked into his eyes, those grey eyes that had seemed so cold when she first saw them. They were warm now, full of emotion, full of love. For her, plain, ordinary Eleanor, who had spent her whole life being told she was worthless. "I love you too," she said. The words felt strange on her tongue. She had never said them before. Not to anyone. "I think I have loved you since that first day in the library when you asked me about books." James pulled her close. Not improperly. Just close enough that she could feel his warmth, his strength, his steadiness. "Then we will find a way," he said. "I promise you, Eleanor, I will not let anyone hurt you again. I will protect you. I will cherish you, and somehow we will build a life together." Eleanor rested her head against his chest. She could hear his heart beat, strong and steady. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she let herself hope. Let herself believe that perhaps dreams could come true after all. But happiness is fragile, and cruel people have a talent for destroying it. Lady Thornwood discovered their secret 3 days later. A gardener had seen them walking together. He had reported it to the housekeeper, who had reported it to Lady Thornwood. By evening, the entire household knew. Lady Thornwood summoned Eleanor to her chambers. Eleanor went with her heart pounding. She knew what was coming. Lady Thornwood stood by the window, her back rigid with fury. "Is it true?" she demanded without turning around. "Have you been meeting secretly with Lord Ashworth?" Eleanor clasped her hands together to stop them from shaking. "Yes, my lady." "How dare you?" Lady Thornwood turned. Her face was twisted with rage. "How dare you presume to think a lord would genuinely care for someone like you? You are a servant. Less than nothing, and yet you have seduced a noble guest under my roof." "I seduced no one," Eleanor said quietly. "Lord Ashworth sought my company. I did not pursue him." "Lies. You are a scheming, manipulative creature, just like your mother. Just like your grandmother. 3 generations of heartly women, and all of you reaching above your station." The accusation stung. "My mother and grandmother were loyal servants. Your mother had ideas beyond her place. She thought herself better than the position she was born to. I see the same pride in you." Lady Thornwood moved closer. But I will not allow you to trap Lord Ashworth with your wiles. He is grieving and vulnerable. You took advantage of his weakness. That is not true. Silence. Lady Thornwood's hand shot out and struck Eleanor across the face. The blow sent her stumbling backward. Her cheek burned, her eyes watered. You are dismissed, Lady Thornwood said coldly. You will pack your belongings and leave this house immediately. You will receive no references, no wages for this month. Nothing. You are fortunate I do not have you arrested for theft. Theft? I have stolen nothing. You have stolen Lord Ashworth's peace of mind. That is worth more than any object. Lady Thornwood smiled cruelly. Now get out of my sight. And if you ever contact Lord Ashworth again, I will make certain you regret it. Eleanor wanted to argue, to defend herself. But what was the point? Lady Thornwood had already decided she was guilty. Nothing Eleanor said would matter. She curtsied stiffly and left. Her face throbbed where she had been struck. Her heart felt like it was breaking into pieces. She went to her room and gathered her few possessions. 2 dresses, a shawl, a book James had given her. It all fit into one small bag. 27 years of life, and this was all she had to show for it. Mrs. Graham appeared at the door. Her kind face was sad. I am so sorry, Eleanor. This is unjust. Unjust things happen to people like me every day, Eleanor said quietly. I was foolish to think I could have something different. Where will you go? I do not know. Eleanor had no family, no friends outside the manor, no money. She was truly alone. Wait here, Mrs. Graham said. She disappeared and returned a few minutes later with a small purse. It is not much. Just a few coins I have saved, but it will help you get somewhere safe. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I cannot take your savings. You can, and you will. Now go, before Lady Thornwood changes her mind and has you thrown out into the rain. Eleanor hugged the older woman, then she picked up her bag and left. She walked through the servants' entrance and into the cold evening. Rain was starting to fall. She had no coat, nowhere to go, but she kept walking, one foot in front of the other. That was all she could do. She made it to the village before exhaustion overtook her. She found a small inn and used some of Mrs. Graham's coins to rent a room for the night. It was tiny and cold, but it was shelter. She lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Her cheek still ached. Her heart ached worse. She thought of James and wondered if he knew what had happened. If he would try to find her. Probably not. He was a lord. He had responsibilities, a reputation to maintain. He could not throw everything away for a dismissed servant. Their love story was over before it had truly begun. Eleanor closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but sleep would not come. She kept seeing James's face, kept hearing his words. I will protect you. I will cherish you. He had meant those words. She believed that, but some promises were impossible to keep. Eleanor spent the next 2 days in the inn, trying to decide what to do. She had almost no money left. She needed work, but without references, no decent household would hire her. She could try for a position in a shop or factory, but those jobs were hard to find and even harder to keep. She was running out of options. On the 3rd morning, there was a knock at her door. Eleanor opened it cautiously. A well-dressed man stood in the hallway. He wore a fine coat and carried a leather satchel. He looked like a solicitor or clerk. Miss Eleanor Hartley, he asked. Yes, I am Mr. Dobson, Lord Ashworth's secretary. His lordship has been searching for you. He requests your presence at the Crown Inn, on the other side of the village. Will you come? Eleanor's heart leaped. He is here? In the village? He has been here since the day you left Thornwood Manor. He has been trying to locate you. Will you come?" Eleanor nodded. She grabbed her shawl and followed Mr. Dobson through the rainy streets. Her mind was racing. James had come for her. He had not abandoned her. He was here. The Crown Inn was much nicer than the place where Eleanor had been staying. Mr. Dobson led her to a private sitting room on the second floor. He knocked and opened the door. "Miss Hartley, my lord." Eleanor stepped inside. James stood by the window. He turned when he heard her enter. His face was a mixture of relief and anguish. "Eleanor." He crossed the room in 3 long strides. He took her hands in his. "Thank God, I was so worried when I returned from my ride and learned what Lady Thornwood had done. He stopped. His eyes fixed on her face, on the bruise that marked her cheek. "She struck you. It does not matter. It matters to me." His voice was low and dangerous. "She had no right to touch you, no right to dismiss you without cause. I was seen with you. That was cause enough for her." James's grip on her hands tightened. "I will not let this stand. I will not allow her to treat you this way. There is nothing you can do. She is within her rights as my employer. Then she will no longer be your employer." James took a deep breath. "Marry me?" Eleanor stared at him. The words did not make sense. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated. "Become my wife. Let me give you my name and my protection. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for the cruelty you have endured." "James, you cannot be serious. Your family will never accept it. Society will shun us both. I have already written to my father. I told him that I intend to marry the woman I love. I told him that if he cannot accept that, then I will resign my position and live on my own means." Eleanor pulled her hands free. "You would give up your inheritance, your title, your place in society?" "In a heartbeat." "But why? I am nobody. I have nothing to offer you." James cupped her face gently. His thumb brushed over the bruise on her cheek. "You offer me everything that matters. You offer me love, companionship, a reason to wake up every morning. You have given me back my life, Eleanor. Let me give you yours. People will call me a fortune hunter. They will say I trapped you. Let them say what they wish. I know the truth. You did not trap me. You saved me." Eleanor felt her resolve crumbling. She wanted this so desperately, wanted him, wanted the life he was offering, but fear still held her back. "I do not know how to be a lady," she whispered. "I do not know how to host dinners or make small talk or any of the things expected of someone in your position. Then we will learn together, or we will not do those things at all. We will build our own life, our own rules." He pressed his forehead against hers. "Please, Eleanor, say yes. Let me love you the way you deserve to be loved." Eleanor thought of her mother and grandmother, 3 generations of Hartley women serving the wealthy, invisible, unappreciated, worked until they broke. She thought of that tradition, the one she was expected to continue, and she realized that James was offering her a chance to break it, to step out of the shadows, to be seen and valued and loved. It was terrifying. It went against everything she had been taught, every expectation placed on her since birth. But it was also exactly what she wanted. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." James let out a breath that sounded like a sob. He pulled her close and held her as if he would never let go. Eleanor wrapped her arms around him and held on just as tightly. For the first time in her life, she felt safe. She felt cherished. She felt like she mattered. "I love you," James murmured against her hair. "I will spend every day proving that to you." "I love you too," Eleanor said. And saying those words felt like freedom. They were married 1 week later in the village church. It was a small ceremony, just Eleanor, James, Mr. Dobson and Mrs. Graham, who had come from Thornwood Manor despite Lady Thornwood's fury. The vicar pronounced them husband and wife. James kissed Eleanor softly. She wore a simple blue dress that James had bought for her. She had never owned anything so fine. After the ceremony, James took her to his estate. It was called Ashworth Hall. It was larger and grander than Thornwood Manor, but James led her past all the formal rooms to a smaller, warmer sitting room. "This will be yours," he said, "your private space. Fill it with whatever you wish. Books, art, flowers from the garden, whatever makes you happy." Eleanor looked around the room. Large windows, comfortable chairs, a desk. "I have never had my own space before," she said softly. "Now you do. Everything I have is yours." Over the following weeks, Eleanor adjusted to her new life. It was strange at first. Servants curtsied to her. They called her my lady. They asked her for instructions. She, who had spent her whole life taking orders, was now expected to give them. James was patient. He helped her navigate the social expectations, but he also made it clear that she did not have to conform if she did not wish to. "This is our home," he said. "We make the rules here." Eleanor began to relax. She filled her sitting room with books. She spent hours in the garden. She learned to ride horses. She started wearing dresses in colors she liked, instead of the drab grays and browns of a servant. Most importantly, she learned what it felt like to be loved. James was attentive and kind. He asked her opinion on matters large and small. He listened when she spoke. He made her feel valued. At night, he held her close and told her she was beautiful. At first, Eleanor did not believe him, but over time, as she saw herself reflected in his eyes, she began to see it too. Not physical beauty necessarily, but the beauty of being loved, of being seen, of being enough. They had been married 3 months when James received a letter from his father, the Duke. Eleanor was in the garden when James found her. His face was serious. "What is it?" she asked. "My father wants to meet you. He is hosting a ball in London next month. He has invited us to attend." Eleanor's stomach dropped. "He wants to inspect me, to see if I am suitable. He wants to meet the woman who made his son happy again," James corrected. "He has heard about our marriage from others. He wants to form his own opinion. And if his opinion is negative..." James took her hand. "Then his opinion is irrelevant. You are my wife. I will not apologize for that to anyone, not even my father." But Eleanor could see the tension in his shoulders. She knew this mattered to him. He might be willing to give up his family for her, but she did not want to be the reason he lost them. "We will go," she said. "We will attend the ball, and I will do my very best to make you proud." "You already make me proud," James said, "every single day." The ball was everything Eleanor had feared, grand and intimidating. Hundreds of people in fine clothes, all of them watching as Eleanor entered on James's arm, all of them whispering behind their fans. Eleanor wore a gown of deep green silk. James had insisted on buying her the finest wardrobe. Her hair was styled elegantly. She looked like a lady. But inside, she still felt like the dismissed servant who had nothing. The Duke approached them. He was older than James, but had the same grey eyes, the same commanding presence. He looked Eleanor up and down. His expression revealed nothing. "So you are the woman who has captured my son's heart," he said. "Yes, Your Grace." Eleanor curtsied perfectly. She had practiced for hours. "I understand you were in service at Thornwood Manor?" "Yes, Your Grace. And now you are Lady Ashworth." Quite a rise in station. Eleanor felt her cheeks burn, but before she could respond, James stepped forward. "Father, Eleanor is my wife. I will not stand here and allow her to be interrogated as if she has done something wrong." The Duke raised an eyebrow. "I am merely making conversation. You are making judgments. Do not mistake one for the other." Father and son stared at each other. The air between them crackled with tension. Eleanor wanted to disappear. She did not want to cause conflict between them. But then the Duke smiled. It was a small smile, but genuine. "You have spirit, James. I worried that you had lost that when Catherine died. I am glad to see I was wrong." He turned to Eleanor. "Forgive me, Lady Ashworth. I was testing you both. I wanted to see if this marriage was as genuine as James claimed. I can see that it is." Eleanor blinked in surprise. "Your Grace, my son looks at you the way I looked at his mother, with complete devotion. That is rare. I will not stand in the way of it." He offered Eleanor his arm. "Come, let me introduce you properly to society, and let us make it clear that anyone who insults you insults the entire Ashworth family." Eleanor took his arm, still stunned. James walked on her other side. Together they moved through the ballroom. The Duke introduced Eleanor to Duke after Duchess, Earl after Earl. He made it clear through his manner that she was to be respected. It did not stop the whispers, but it silenced the open hostility. Eleanor could live with whispers. As the evening wore on, Eleanor began to relax. She danced with James. She made polite conversation with strangers. She even laughed a few times. Near midnight, James led her out onto the terrace. The cool air was a relief after the stuffy ballroom. They stood at the railing and looked out over the gardens. "You were magnificent tonight," James said. "I was terrified. You did not show it. You held your head high. You faced them all with grace and dignity." He turned to face her. "I am so very proud of you, Eleanor." Eleanor looked up at him, at this man who had changed her entire world. "Do you ever regret it, marrying me?" "Never, not for a single moment. Even when society whispers, even when people judge us, especially then." James pulled her close. "Because every whisper, every judgment, every disapproving look reminds me that I chose love over expectation. I chose happiness over duty. I chose you. And I would make that choice again and again." Eleanor rested her head against his chest. She listened to his heartbeat, strong and steady, just like him. "For 3 generations my family served yours," she said softly, "and then you broke that tradition. You made me an equal instead of a servant. You gave me a voice, a life, a future." "You gave me those things first," James said. "You woke me from grief. You taught me to feel again. We saved each other, Eleanor." She looked up at him. "I love you. I love you too, always." He kissed her there on the terrace under the stars, and Eleanor felt something she had never felt before. She felt complete. She felt like she belonged. She felt like she was home. Not because of the grand estate or the fine clothes or the title, but because she was loved, truly, deeply, unconditionally loved. And that, she realized, was worth more than 3 generations of tradition, worth more than society's approval, worth more than anything else in the world. 5 years passed. 5 years of happiness that Eleanor had never imagined possible. She and James built a life together at Ashworth Hall. They traveled to Italy and Greece. They read books together by the fire. They walked in the garden every morning. Eleanor never forgot where she came from. She treated the servants with kindness and respect. She made sure they were paid fairly and given time to rest. She became known throughout the county as a lady who cared for those beneath her station. James continued to dote on her. He still looked at her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. He still told her every day that he loved her. They had 2 children, a daughter named Catherine, after James's first wife, and a son named William. Eleanor taught them to be kind, to see the value in every person, to judge people by their character, not their position. One afternoon, Eleanor was in the nursery reading to the children when Mrs. Graham appeared at the door. She was older now, retired from service. She lived in a cottage on the Ashworth estate. Eleanor visited her often. Mrs. Graham, Eleanor said with a smile. "Come in. The children were just asking about you." Mrs. Graham entered and hugged each child. Then she sat beside Eleanor. "I received a letter today from Thornwood Manor." Eleanor's smile faded. "Oh, Lady Thornwood has passed. Miss Catherine is now mistress of the house. She is looking for a new housekeeper. She wrote to ask if I would return. Will you?" Mrs. Graham shook her head. "No. I am quite happy here, if you will continue to have me." "Always," Eleanor said warmly. Mrs. Graham looked at Eleanor, at this woman who had once been a frightened, mistreated servant, who was now a confident lady, a loving mother, a woman who had broken free of the chains that had bound 3 generations of her family. "Your mother would be so proud of you," Mrs. Graham said softly. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Do you think so?" "I know so. You escaped the cycle. You made a different choice, and look at the life you have built." Eleanor looked around the nursery, at her children playing with their toys, at the warm sunlight streaming through the windows, at the portrait of James hanging on the wall. "I did not do it alone," she said. "James helped me see that I was worth more than I had been taught. He loved me when I did not know how to love myself. That is what the right person does," Mrs. Graham said. "They see us as we truly are, not as the world tells us we should be." That evening, Eleanor told James about Lady Thornwood's death. They were sitting in their private sitting room, the one that had been hers when she first came to Ashworth Hall. It was still her favorite room. "How do you feel?" James asked. "Sad," Eleanor admitted. "Despite everything, I spent years of my life there. It was my home for a long time. A home that did not treat you well. No, but it led me to you. So perhaps I should be grateful for it after all." James pulled her close. "You are remarkably forgiving. I have learned that holding on to anger only hurts the one who carries it. Lady Thornwood was cruel because she was unhappy. I pity her now more than anything." "You have such a generous heart." Eleanor smiled. "You taught me that I could afford to be generous. When you have love, you can let go of everything else." They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. Eleanor thought about her grandmother and mother, about the lives